The door to my office in downtown Chicago clicked shut behind Malachi Hayes, and in that instant, my carefully constructed world began to crack. Dr. Julian Carter, I need to tell you something right now. I'm in love with you, and I know it's wrong because you're my therapist, but I can't keep pretending anymore, he said. His voice steady but his dark eyes filled with a desperation that hit me like a freight train. I sat there, 35 years old, married to Lisa for 8 years, the man who had counseled hundreds through their identity crises, feeling my heart pound in a way it never had before. Malachi, 28, with his tousled dark hair and athletic build from his job as a graphic designer, had come to me 3 weeks ago for depression after his conservative family in rural Illinois disowned him for coming out as gay. I had thought it was a standard case, something I could handle with empathy and professional distance. But his words hung in the air, forcing me to confront the strange pull I had felt during our previous sessions, the way his stories of longing mirrored something buried deep in my past. Malachi, we need to talk about this carefully, I managed, keeping my tone even as my palms grew damp. He leaned forward on the couch, sunlight from the floor-to-ceiling windows catching the sharp line of his jaw. I'm not asking for anything from you, doctor. I just needed to say it out loud. You're the first person who's ever really seen me. His honesty was raw, unfiltered, the kind most patients guarded until the 10th session. I nodded, scribbling notes I barely read later, while inside my mind replayed every conversation we had shared about his childhood farm, the church that turned its back, the brother who stopped answering calls. By the end of the hour, I had referred him to a colleague for ongoing work, citing boundary concerns, but Malachi refused. Please don't send me away. I trust you. That night, I drove home through the loop traffic, radio off, replaying his confession. Lisa greeted me with her usual kiss on the cheek and a glass of Pinot. Over dinner, she asked about my day. I lied and said it was routine. The lie tasted like ash. The next week, Malachi arrived early, carrying 2 coffees. Thought you might need this after last time. We talked about safer topics, his new freelance project, the latest exhibit at the Art Institute. Yet every pause carried weight. I found myself studying the way his fingers traced the rim of the cup, the quiet strength in his posture. When the session ended, I walked him to the elevator, something I never did with other clients. Take care of yourself, Malachi. He smiled, small and sad. You too, Julian. The use of my first name lingered long after the doors closed. That weekend, Lisa and I attended a friend's anniversary party. Everyone toasted to 10 perfect years of marriage. I smiled, raised my glass, but my thoughts kept drifting to the man who had walked into my office and cracked open a door I had nailed shut since college. By Monday morning, I realized I was counting the hours until our next appointment. The realization terrified me. Malachi's second confession came during a stormy Tuesday when the city lights blurred outside the windows. My parents called yesterday, he said, voice cracking for the first time. Dad said if I ever come home it won't be as their son. Mom just cried. I handed him the tissue box, our fingers brushing, and the contact sent an unwelcome spark up my arm. I told myself it was nothing, just the intensity of the moment. But as he spoke about the empty seat at Thanksgiving, the childhood bedroom they had already cleared out, I felt my own chest tighten. I had always prided myself on staying objective. My training, my books, my reputation, they all said therapists do not fall for patients. Yet here I was, canceling a lunch meeting so I could extend our session by 15 minutes. You're allowed to grieve the family you lost, I said, and meant it more than any other line I had ever spoken in this room. Malachi looked up, eyes shining. You make me feel like I'm not broken for wanting what I want. That evening I sat in my car in the parking garage and called my old college roommate Alex, the one I had almost kissed senior year before I panicked and dated the first girl who smiled at me. Hey, remember that night at the lake house? I asked without preamble. Alex laughed softly. Took you long enough to bring it up, man. We talked for an hour. When I hung up, the rain had stopped and my hands were shaking. Lisa noticed the distance. You've been somewhere else lately, she said over breakfast the next morning. I told her work was heavy, a half-truth that sat between us like an uninvited guest. At the office I reviewed Malachi's file and realized I had written more personal notes than clinical ones. His favorite color, the way he pronounced Chicago with that faint Midwest drawl, the scar on his left knuckle from a childhood fence accident, details that had nothing to do with diagnosis. Our next session he brought a sketch he had done of the lakefront at dawn. Thought you might like it. No pressure. I accepted it, tucking it into my drawer like contraband. When he left I stared at the drawing for a long time, tracing the careful lines with my fingertip. That night I dreamed of standing on that same shoreline, Malachi beside me. No titles, no rules, just two men watching the sun rise. I woke up before dawn, heart racing, and slipped out of bed so Lisa wouldn't feel me trembling. 3 months into therapy I made the decision that changed everything. Malachi, I can't be your therapist anymore, I said quietly. It's not ethical. He nodded as if he had expected it. I know, but can we still talk? As friends. I should have said no. Instead I gave him my personal number. The first text arrived that same evening, a simple thank you and a photo of his dog curled on the couch. I replied before I could stop myself. We met for coffee at a small cafe in Wicker Park, far from my office. No couch, no notepad, just two men talking. He told me about the gallery that wanted his work, the way art had saved him when family didn't. I told him about the pressure I had felt growing up to be the perfect son, perfect husband, perfect everything. The conversation flowed so naturally I lost track of time. When we parted on the sidewalk he hugged me. Brief, warm, nothing more, and I felt the ground shift beneath my feet. Lisa found the sketch in my drawer while looking for stamps. Who drew this? She asked. I lied again, said it was a patient's gift. The lie grew heavier each time. At work my colleagues noticed I seemed distracted. My best friend at the practice pulled me aside. You okay, Julian? You look like you're carrying the world. I brushed it off, but inside I was unraveling. Malachi and I kept meeting, museum strolls, late-night diner runs, long walks along the river. Each time the space between us felt smaller. One rainy night he walked me to my car and said, I meant what I said that first day, but I'll never push. I just want you to be happy. His sincerity cracked the last wall I had built. I drove home in silence, tears mixing with the rain on the windshield. The misunderstanding came on a Friday evening. Lisa saw me leaving the cafe with Malachi. She didn't say anything that night, but the next morning she asked point-blank if I was having an affair. Not the way you think, I answered, and the truth spilled out in halting sentences. The feelings I had denied for years, the way Malachi had forced me to see myself clearly. She cried, then grew quiet. I need time, she whispered. I moved into the guest room that night. Malachi texted asking if everything was all right. I couldn't bring myself to answer. Instead, I drove to the lake at 2 a.m. and sat on the hood of my car staring at the dark water. When my phone finally buzzed, it was Malachi. I'm here if you need to talk. No expectations. I met him at an all-night diner. We sat in a corner booth and I told him everything. He listened without interrupting, then reached across the table and squeezed my hand once. Whatever you decide, I'm proud of you for being honest with yourself. The following week, my practice partner suggested I take some time off. Word had spread. Patients were rescheduled. I felt the professional life I had built crumbling, yet for the first time in years I also felt free. Malachi and I spent afternoons in his small studio apartment, talking about everything and nothing. He showed me sketches of a future he once thought impossible. I shared stories of the boy I had been before fear took over. One evening he cooked pasta and we ate on his tiny balcony overlooking the city lights. I never expected you to love me back, he said softly. I just wanted you to know you weren't alone. I looked at him across the candlelight and realized I had already crossed every line that mattered. Malachi's family reached out unexpectedly, his sister at least. She wanted to meet in neutral territory. We drove to a park in the suburbs together. The conversation was painful, full of tears and accusations, but his sister hugged him at the end. "I miss my brother," she said. Malachi cried on the drive home, and I pulled over so I could hold him while he shook. In that moment, I understood sacrifice wasn't always dramatic. Sometimes it was simply showing up. Lisa filed for separation. The papers arrived on a gray Tuesday. I signed them with a steady hand, surprised by how little regret I felt. My mother called from Ohio, voice tight with disappointment. "We raised you better." I told her I was finally raising myself. The call ended in silence. At a support group for LGBTQ professionals, I met other therapists who had faced similar crossroads. Their stories gave me courage. Malachi waited outside every meeting, coffee in hand, never asking for more than I could give. Slowly, carefully, we built something new. Not patient and doctor, not secret and shame, but two men learning to stand in the light together. The city felt different now. Walks through Millennium Park carried new meaning. Even the harsh Chicago winter seemed gentler when we faced it side by side. I started seeing a therapist of my own, working through the guilt and the fear. Malachi kept creating his art brighter, bolder. We never rushed. Every step was chosen, discussed, respected. 6 months later, we stood on the same lakefront where I had once dreamed of us. The sun was setting in streaks of orange and pink. Malachi turned to me, wind ruffling his hair. "I never thought I'd get to stand here with you like this." I took his hand, no longer afraid of who might see. Neither did I. We had both lost pieces of our old lives. Family approval, professional certainty, the comfort of pretending. But we had gained something priceless. The freedom to be exactly who we were. Friends slowly returned. My sister flew in from Denver and hugged Malachi without hesitation. "You make him smile like I haven't seen in years," she told him. Small victories stacked up. I opened a small private practice focused on LGBTQ clients, no longer hiding behind a title that had once defined me. Malachi's gallery show sold out. One painting, titled First Honest Look, hung in our new apartment. We still faced stares on the street, awkward silences at family gatherings that never fully healed, and the occasional sleepless night when old doubts crept in. But every morning we chose each other again. That choice, more than any grand declaration, became our strength. Can love truly justify crossing professional boundaries in the name of authenticity? True or false?